Alrighty. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our second series of Lunch and Learn. This is the first webinar in a series that goes all the way till June. So this particular event is titled Effectively Using DCJS Program ListServs. My name is Taylor Alfred. I'm a community corrections rep in the Office of Probation and Correctional Alternatives, specifically the Vocation, Education, Employment, and Reentry Unit. You're going to be hearing from myself and my colleague Samantha Hollis, also a community corrections rep in the Alternatives to Incarceration Unit. We are going to have a question and answer period at the end of this presentation. If you have any technical issues, feel free to utilize the chat. If you have your camera on, great. If not, don't feel like you have to turn it on. I know it's a lunch and learn, so some of you might actually be eating your lunch, and that is completely fine. We don't expect anyone to keep their cameras on. And as Samantha said in the chat, there will be some interaction involved with a poll coming up on your screen, so if you can just keep an eye out for that, and we'll be asking you to put some answers in the chat as well. Sam, do you mind flipping to the next slide? Sorry. So I kind of covered everything on this slide, so we'll go to the next one. So before we get started, we have a poll. Sam's gonna pop that up on your screen. You should be able to see it in a second. And the question is, are you currently subscribed in either the ATI, Counter Reentry Task Force, or EFS ListServ? Yes, no, unsure. And once we get those results in, they'll be published on your screen as well. So we kind of just really want to get a sense if you know if you are actually subscribed to any of these ListServs. So we'll just give folks another second to fill it out. Looks like the majority so far is unsure, but we'll let folks, it should be popping up on your screen. Alrighty, looks like there's just a couple more people that haven't answered, but they could be folks that are just jumping on now. So I think it's okay if we close the poll and we'll see what the results show us. So the results, I'm not sure if you can see them on your screen, but the majority of people said they were unsure if they were subscribed in any of the ListServs that DCJS currently manages, but very close behind that were folks that said yes. So it seems like folks are either unsure or they are confident that they are enrolled in a ListServ, and we will be able to clarify that for you throughout this presentation. So the next slide has our learning objectives for this presentation. So by the end of this webinar, you as a participant will be able to explain the differences between a ListServ and a distribution list, as well as the purpose of a ListServ. You'll be able to cite specific examples of ListServ etiquette, as well as you'll be able to draw upon and remember some example posts or emails to the ListServ. You'll have acquired a knowledge of the 5 program ListServs currently being managed by OPCA, and we're also going to review the survey results from a survey that we issued in the last 2 weeks, kind of just trying to gauge folks' use of the ListServ and knowledge of the ListServ as well. So to kind of set that bar again, in the chat this time, I'd like folks to just put in what do you think a ListServ is? It can be a few words, it can be a sentence. Just quickly, first comes to mind, what is a ListServ? And just throw that in the chat. You can do it to everyone or all presenters or co-hosts, whatever the option is, and I'll read them out loud as they come in. So again, just no I mean, there's a right or wrong answer, I guess you could say, but no right or wrong answer for this particular exercise. What do you think a ListServ is? So I have a topic-specific email group, an organized email group that shares information and communication. And Sam, feel free to jump in if you get any that are specific to you. Everyone can discuss a topic and solve as a group, a server email list of email addresses. Yeah, so it seems like folks are kind of heading in the right direction. It is an email list, it is a group, but it's really also meant to be a communication that's two ways, and we'll get into that right now. So a distribution list, which is probably something that you either have already within your programs or you're enrolled in, is really just one-way traffic. It's meant to send out announcements, send out program updates, maybe inviting anyone to a meeting or an event. But if you were to reply all to that distribution list, chances are you're not going to be able to, because it's locked. It's one-way communication from the host agency to who's ever enrolled in that distribution list. But a ListServ is different. A ListServ is really meant to be two-way communication. So anyone that's subscribed to a ListServ, you receive emails, you receive posts from anyone else that's subscribed to that ListServ as well. It doesn't mean that just the host agency is able to send information. We are, DCJS is able to send, and you probably most likely receive all the posts either from myself or Sam, but that's, you have the ability to write back and to write back to everyone else on your ListServ. And we'll, again, show you who is enrolled or subscribed in your particular ListServ. But that's the biggest point here, right? So a ListServ is two-way communication, and that's what we really want to drive home today. So the next slide kind of gives you a little background as to why we created these ListServs. So back in 2015, there was an action planning process, and the feedback that DCJS received from our program was that they wanted an opportunity or a mechanism to communicate with other programs within their cluster, right? So within the ATI cluster, we wanted an opportunity for folks to share information and to collaborate. Within the County Reentry Task Force, same deal. And so what DCJS did is we implemented these ListServs, and we included not only your OPCA reps in your programs that you're, partnering with, but we also included other other offices within our agency. Maybe OJRP has some staff members that are enrolled, or OPDF have staff members that are enrolled. And it's, again, remember, it's a communication, it's a two-way communication circle. The ListServs is also meant to be a networking opportunity. Especially remotely, it's really important to have an opportunity and have a way to communicate with folks that maybe are in opposite parts of the state that you've never met before. Maybe there's a new staff member and they don't quite know who a fellow staff member in another program is, so they can utilize the ListServ to find that out and to meet that person and to discuss ideas. And so again, I'm going to say this a couple different times. It's meant to be a collaborative space, a two-way communication. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to go through a couple different slides of ListServ do's and don'ts. I'm going to show you some etiquette tips, and as well as some examples of ListServ posts and some of the qualities of those posts and how you can take those forward. So if you participated in any of the DCJS informational exchanges in the last year, you probably have seen this slide before. If you're enrolled in a ListServ, you've definitely seen this slide before because we've shared it. And it's basically our main do's and don'ts. Essentially, again, ListServ, you want to share best practices. You want to talk about suggestions for improving CBI and employment readiness groups, especially virtually. Maybe there's something you did that works really well and you can share that with your partner. Maybe you have a big meeting you want to invite folks to, a job fair, an outreach event, any training that you're hosting or that you hear of. That's what the ListServ also can be used for. The things that the ListServ is not to be used for is questions regarding reduction in milestones, budget questions, reimbursement questions, anything data specific, you want to make sure that you're reaching out to the specific office that handles those inquiries. So maybe that is OPDF or OJFP. The last thing, I can't stress this enough, is any information that would breach any sort of confidentiality for a client is something that's not meant for the ListServ. And if you have any questions about whether or not something is appropriate for the ListServ, the best thing to do is to reach out to your program rep and to ask first before sending. And we can let you know if that something is appropriate for the ListServ. So the next two slides have to do with some sample etiquette. And again, this could be used for a distribution list or a ListServ, but the first thing meaning you want to make sure that anything you're posting or you're sharing to a ListServ, you include the contact information for whoever it is that needs to be contacted for any additional questions. So oftentimes you'll see posts from Sam and I, and we're forwarding it from somebody else, from some other organization. But don't contact me about the training. You want to contact the other person that actually sent the original request. So don't take that out when you're forwarding. So that's something to keep in mind. Being concise and clearly stating what the post is about, whether that's in the subject line or the first few lines of the post, you know, you want to draw your reader in, right? So that's something to keep in mind as well. When forwarding emails, depending on whatever software you're using, sometimes you get those weird orange boxes. You may, you know, the format might change, the text style might change. And you want to just make sure that whatever you're forwarding, either you're putting it in a fresh, clean new email or you're cleaning it up so there isn't any of that weird warning signs and changes to the format. This also is important because if you're forwarding something where someone has to scroll for, I always call it longer than a couple clicks, they're probably not going to read what you have. So if you can delete any of that in between email and or start a fresh email, that's always best. When replying, we've all been there where we've received an email and somebody replied all and said, thanks, or me too, or looks great, and that's great. But only reply to the person that sent it, maybe on the side, say, thanks so much for sharing. The ListServ really should be questions back, so like that someone else might not ask. So is there a cost? How do folks travel to this? You know, when will I get the Zoom link for this event? Those are the type of questions you might want to follow up to the whole group because someone else is probably already thinking the same thing. But a thank you and a me too can be something that's done on the side. Again, just another little tip. If you want to be removed from the ListServ, just reach out to the manager that's assigned to your program ListServ, which we will tell you who each person is based on the ListServ. You don't want to utilize the ListServ as a way to send administrative emails such as remove me from the list, or I have a new staff member, I'd like to add them, or I can't see what's going on in this ListServ. Reach out to the manager specifically for assistance. So just a couple more etiquette tips. Always check to see who you're sending to first. If you're a part of many ListServs, you want to be careful you don't spam them all at the same time and too much with the same content. So just be conscious before you hit send that you're sending it to the right group and that the post applies to the programs that are subscribed in that ListServ. The ListServ community, you could say, is a safe place. We're not here to flame anyone, to challenge or attack others. It's meant to stimulate conversation and not create contention. Again, just when it comes to confidentiality, we can't stress this enough. When in doubt, always ask your rep. And that goes for anything related to the ListServ. We talked about the purpose, right? So the purpose of a ListServ specific to, let's say, the Counter Reentry Task Forces is to discuss things that are related to the Counter Reentry Task Force. You're not inviting them to your holiday party. You're not, you know, asking them to join your LinkedIn page or sending jokes or chain letters. It's really discussing the Counter Reentry Task Forces. It might seem crazy to have to say, but you just never know. So we throw it all out there today. I have 3 examples of some sample ListServ posts. And when I say posts, I really mean emails, but post is the term that they use in the ListServ world. And I have highlighted here on the screen, I'll go through it, some things that really set this post out from the others. So first being the subject line. You want to draw your reader in. So right here, right away, someone's looking for help, looking for how to improve IJ and Ready, Set, Work. That probably applies to almost every county reentry task force, for example, and I speak on that because that's my program area. You have confirmed you're sending it to the right group. What I like about this particular post is they said, hello, CRTF colleagues. It really kind of personalized it, and you're reminding people that they're receiving it because they're on the CRTF ListServ. Got your questions in there, I need some help. And then you have contact information, and that's really important. Contact information specifically for the sender. So the next example is a job fair, and it's a job fair sponsored by Department of Labor. And the reason I threw this in here is for a couple different reasons. First, they have a really catchy subject line, register now, 100+ companies, and these are the fields. Like that, again, draws the reader in. What's going to make them want to click on that email? We get hundreds of emails a day. You really want to draw them in. They have attachments. They have 2 different types of attachments of all the content that's in the email, which is important. They have chosen to highlight and bold certain text that would stand out to the reader, another good aspect. And they have the link to register. The one thing we stress a lot at DCJS, especially in the virtual world, is the fewer emails you receive on an event is sometimes better. You want to get the event information and the registration link at the same time, because if I see, oh great, DOL is having a career fair, I've got to remember to sign up, but the link's not there, you're probably not going to sign up. So include as much information as you can. One of the other important things reason I threw this in here was because this particular job fair, on the previous slide, was just for the Western New York region. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's one county, right? But what it could get you to think of is say, hey, DOL is hosting a career fair in Western New York. I wonder if they're hosting one in the Hudson Valley or in Long Island. And it gets you to think about, well, maybe I should find out who my DOL rep is. So I can reach out to them to say, hey, are you doing a job fair? So just because the ListServ covers counties all across the state, and particularly for the CRTF or programs all across the state, doesn't mean it can't jog your mind to think of reaching out to somebody else to see if there's an event that you're hosting in your region that might help surrounding counties or programs in your area. So again, just another little tip there. And the last example is a training class, an OSHA training class. And the one thing that I always tell people, if it's free, tell them right up front. Free, remote, OSHA 30 class. Great. Everyone's going to click on that. It has a flyer. It has very brief information in the email. And the biggest piece of information in this email, this post, says it's open to all New York State residents. Being hosted by the Westchester Educational Opportunity Center, but it's open to everyone. So think about that when you're getting flyers from your programs within your area or your providers in your area. Is it something that, because it's remote, can be open to everybody? Maybe you should find out. And if that's the case, share it to the ListServ, because we're all here to help each other, and especially in this remote world, things have been able to get a lot easier when it comes to training classes, and we've been able to train folks all across the state remotely. So again, it's just something to think about. And again, lastly, having contact information specifically to who they should contact related to the training class is very important. So I know I just covered a lot. I'm going to turn the floor over to Sam, who's going to bring it home for us. And again, I really appreciate everyone being here. I'll monitor the chat if anyone has any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Taylor. All right. Let's get into the current OPCA ListServs. Colleen Thorne did note in the chat that there is a Caseload Explorer ListServ for probation directors and people in probation, which I've heard is a very active ListServ. So we didn't include them here because we focus on kind of the ATI reentry umbrella that we have. However, we really do want to get it to the point that that ListServ is. There's a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of people reaching out and speaking to one another, asking questions. So we're really hoping at the end of this that that's where these ListServs are going to get. So let's look at the current OPCA ListServs. Again, not noted is that Caseload Explorer. So we have the CRTF ListServ. The email address is there, DCJS.ListServ County Reentry Task Forces at svc.ny.gov. Now, why this email address is important, typically what you'll see is when we send out an email from the ListServ, typically it's Taylor or I, we send it and it comes directly from our email address. It does not come from the ListServ email address because that's not how that works. So when you want to send anything to the respective ListServ you're in, you're going to make sure that you send it to that email address from your own email address. That way people know who it's coming from, and like Taylor noted earlier, you don't have to reply all. If you have a specific answer for that person, you could just reply specifically to that person. Members are the CRTF coordinators, CRTF co-chairs, DOCS co-chairs, and reentry managers, DCJS staff, which includes OPCA, OJRP, and OPDF. And again, Taylor Alfred is the host, and she maintains the ListServ for the CRTF ListServ. The DCJS partners with the State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision to support the county reentry task forces in 20 counties throughout New York State. Those county reentry task forces coordinate and manage services provided to individuals who are returning to their communities after serving a state prison sentence and determined to be at moderate and high risk of reoffending. The CRTFs provide access to services and assistance that allows individuals to transition home and remain crime-free by focusing on their stabilization needs, service coordination, and the provision of cognitive behavioral interventions and/or employment readiness programs. Again, if you'd like to be added to this ListServ or have new staff that have not been added, please send an email to the email address shown, which is taylor.alfred@dcjs.ny.gov, and she will have that person added to the ListServ. Next, we have the ATI ListServ for our reduction in incarceration and recidivism programs. That email address is there. That's the one you're going to use when you want to send to the ListServ group. Members in this one are program staff and DCJS staff. OPCA is who we have in that currently. New members or unsubscribe are going to submit that name and email address to myself, samantha.hollis@dcjs.ny.gov. There are 28 programs in our reduction in incarceration and recidivism program portfolio. These include pretrial programs, offender-based advocacy programs, task programs, and other various ATIs that offer cognitive behavioral interventions in addition to other services to their participants. So again, if you have someone that would like to be added to this ListServ, please email me at the email that is on here. And, like I said earlier, we do send out training notices and things. So chances are you've seen an email from myself or Taylor, so that is going to be who you're going to email for the respective ListServ. And we will have this recorded. It will be posted on our website, and we can send this out to anyone who needs it. All right, next up is the ATI ListServ for our jail-based program. So there's the email there that you're going to use to send to this ListServ specifically. Members of this are program staff, jail partners. We'd hope that, some more jail partners would get on this. DCJS staff, again, is OPCA. And again, I maintain this ListServ, so you can email me if there's anyone you want to add or remove from this ListServ. There are currently 15 jail-based programs in this portfolio, which are working within jails and correctional facilities throughout New York State, delivering cognitive behavioral intervention services for incarcerated individuals. So again, if you want to be added to that, please email me. Also, again, if you have any jail partners that would like to be included, please either share the information with them and they can email me themselves, or you can let me know if they would like to be added. All right, next we have the Employment Focus Services ListServ. There's the email that you're going to use to send to that whole ListServ. The members are EFS program staff and DCJS staff, including OPCA, OJRP, and OPDF. New members or unsubscribe, you're going to submit to Frank Cangiano, and his email is there. DCJS funds 13 current employment focus services programs across the state. Again, employment focused, so that's what these programs focus on, is getting those participants finding gainful employment, working on resumes, things of that nature. So if you want to add anyone to that list, please email Frank Cangiano at the email on this slide. And last, we have our OWDS ListServ. That's the Offender Workforce Development Specialist ListServ. There's the email there that you would utilize to email the whole group. Members in this are certified OWDS members. So that's people that have gone through the very lengthy, I think, 3-week training. I've heard it is not for the faint of heart, not for the weak, but there are a good amount of people that have been OWDS trained. They just finished a group. So if you want to add onto that one or unsubscribe, again, Frank Cangiano is the manager of this ListServ, so you can email him at the email provided here. Certified Offender Workforce Development Specialists are enrolled in an OWDS-specific ListServ to discuss OWDS and Ready, Set, Work topics, best practices, and the modules. All right, before we get into the ListServ survey results that was sent out to the ListServs that were mentioned, I would like it if you can put in the chat if there are any other specific ListServs you feel may be beneficial to you or your programs and would like to see. So if you have any ideas or anything that you feel would be really beneficial to your group, please put that in the chat and just let us know. All right, so the ListServ survey we sent out had a few topics on there. This is the first one. We really wanted to know, do you regularly read the emails on the ListServ? We want to make sure that what we're sending is actually getting to people and that they are reading it. So you'll see here, primarily, yes, we had a few no's, but, you know, that's good. So you're reading them. While we only had 64 individuals respond at the time, there was a wide net of individuals from different program areas throughout New York State that received this survey and responded, such as probation departments, DOCs, workforce development programs, ATI programs, reentry task forces, etc. So thank you for the 64 people, and I think we had a couple extra that actually came in after the fact that took the time to complete this survey, because it was very beneficial for us to know that, you know, what we're sending people are looking at, and if not, you know, why, and it gave us some really good topic areas, which we're going to cover in the next few slides. So here you'll see, do you post comments or questions on the ListServ? Now, we already knew the answer to this, but the survey did solidify that answer. You'll see here, often is very small little topic there, sometimes, rarely, and never. So rarely and never, you know, is not really good for having that open dialogue on these ListServs. So we're really hoping at the end of this that you guys really feel more comfortable utilizing the ListServ, you know how to utilize the ListServ, and hopefully we can change that from rarely and never to often and sometimes, primarily often. But, you know, we know that everybody's busy. You don't always have the answer or a response to things, and that's okay. But we would really love for this to be more of an open dialogue, more of an open forum for our programs to be able to discuss with one another how their programs are working, best practices, things that are not working. You know, I know with COVID-19, a lot of our programs have had to shift their whole way of programming. A lot of people, you know, I think would have benefited from being able to speak to one another to see what was working with COVID and having to change things. Simple things such as what platform works best for you, your program, and the participants. Free platforms. You know, we at DCJS have gone over these things. We've had webinars with these things, but, you know, you guys are in the field doing the work. You guys are working with the participants who may not have the technology, may not have cell phones, things of that nature. So it's best to hear it from your counterparts, the people that are also doing the same work and encountering the same barriers. So we would really love to be able to switch that over again from rarely to never to sometimes and often. We just really want an open forum for you guys to be able to discuss things amongst yourselves. You know, not just from us at DCJS. I think it holds more weight when it comes to fellow programs. So hopefully, if we do this survey in another year, we will see those results shift over. And the last part here is, do you find this information that is shared helpful? So this is good to see. Primarily it was a yes, there were a few no's again. We were pleased to see that primarily the information currently shared is found to be helpful. But I really believe once we start having more program dialogue, that you will all find the information to be even more helpful. So hopefully, again, if we did this survey within a year, we would see all yeses and no no's. All right, this part I felt was very beneficial to show. So this is where we asked, what would you like to see more of on the listserv? Now, mind you, we had 64 results, so I only put in the ones that either were repeated or I felt were very beneficial for the programs, and really what we at DCJS want to see come out of these listservs. So here we have information on resources and services that can best assist the population we work with, best practices and suggestions for service delivery, training for staff, training and job opportunities for clients, which I think is really important. Information for your specific area. So as Taylor mentioned, we are going to be sending things out that may not be specific to your area at that moment, but hopefully, you know, other ones will come that will be specific to your area, or it'll jog your thinking to maybe host a similar job fair or forum in your own area. Employment and education and professional development resources, successes and challenges in the virtual realm, which I think was very prevalent, obviously, with COVID-19, and we're still facing now as many people are working from home. And what we saw a lot was have yet to use, would like to learn more about it. So that's why we felt that this Lunch and Learn was going to be very beneficial, because we saw that answer a lot. A lot of people didn't know what the listservs were to be utilized for. I think they thought maybe that it was just a way for DCJS to send things, but we really, really would love for these to be more of a program dialogue and an open forum for you all. So I would love it at the conclusion of this presentation if at least one person that is subscribed to one of the listservs can, you know, share something in the listserv, share a training opportunity, or share something that's been working for you, something that, you know, maybe a barrier you're facing and you would like to see some program input. I would love it if at least one person could do that. That way we can know that, yes, it's working. Yes, you gained some knowledge from this Lunch and Learn. And we really just want to see these listservs being utilized for what they should be utilized for, and that's dialogue amongst one another. All right. Last thing, at this time, we would like to open up for discussion. Any questions or comments other than those that were put in the chat? I do see some comments from George Escalante. He asked, are there any listservs for community organizations such as the One Stop and or non-for-profit organizations that provide resources for our clients? Not within DCJS, not within our specific program areas, as we typically have done them based on the funding stream they're in. So you'll see the CRTF, the Employment Focused Services, and the ATI. So the One Stop, you may see some of that in the Employment Focused Services, because they primarily work with a lot of One Stops. Or non-for-profit organizations, no, because, you know, unless they're a program that's in our program, we wouldn't have that data. The resources he's speaking of are certifications, training, suits, transportation, et cetera. So again, I think, George, if you're not in the employment focused services, that may be beneficial for you to join, because I think that's something that, you know, once programs actively start using this, those seem to be topics that would be covered in the employment focused services. All right, I'm going to throw up one more poll while we're doing this, again, if you have any questions or comments, please either raise your hand to indicate you would like to speak. As I mentioned, you are all muted, or you can put them in the chat and Taylor and I will get to them. And while we're doing that, I'm going to pull up the last poll. And Taylor, if there's anything you wanted to add, or Frank, if he is on the line, please feel free.
The only thing I was going to mention was sometimes how I find the things to share on the listserv, it's because it's coming from a program distribution list. So you may have an internal, for example, I speak on the Counter Reentry Task Forces, Monroe CRTF has their own distribution list, and I get those emails and then I see, oh, this could actually apply to the whole listserv. And that's how I'm finding out that information. But ideally, it would be great if the CRTF forwarded it to the listserv themselves. So George, to answer your question, that might help you find other programs, is asking around to see what other listservs exist in your cluster.
Now, as you guys can see, the poll is up. So it is, how likely are you to use the listserv now that you have a better understanding of its purpose? So I see some people are answering. So once I have the majority of people, we will close that. And again, any questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand if you'd like to be unmuted. All right, we have about 38 of the 58 people who have completed, so thank you. We have 1 in progress and 19 of you who have not started. So if you could just quickly answer this poll, this is a good, really a good survey for us to know whether this information was, benefit and helpful to you. And so far, we're getting a lot of very likelies and somewhat likely. We don't have any not likelies yet, and it's okay. You can be honest. We won't judge you, I promise. We just really want to get a good gauge of whether this listserv was helpful and whether you think the listserv will be beneficial to you in the long run. So thank you. All right, so we have 52 seconds left, so I'm going to close the poll. Pretty much everyone answered. but that's okay. Waiting for the last one to submit their responses. All right, while we're waiting for this, I'm gonna put up. All right, so you'll see here, I don't know if you can see it, but hopefully you can. Let's apply this. All right, so 46 of the 58 of you have responded. We have 24 out of the 58 saying very likely to utilize, which is great. I'm very happy to see that. 17 of 58 somewhat likely, and we had 0 not likely. So that is awesome. We really appreciate the time you guys took today. We know it's your lunchtime, but we finished in the 45 minutes, so it's less than an hour. So you have an extra 15 minutes to do what you need to do. The last slide here, we'll just put up, this is the contact information. So contact information for myself, Taylor, Nicole Aldi, who is my unit manager, and Michelle Clark, who is Taylor's unit manager. And we really just want to thank you for taking the time today. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Taylor or myself, and we will be happy to answer any outside of this forum.